At its height, the Roman Empire was the greatest civilization the world had ever seen. It stretched from the deserts of Egypt to the mountains of Britain, from the Atlantic shores of Spain to the rivers of Mesopotamia. Rome ruled over more than 70 million people, controlled 1.9 million square miles of land, and built the strongest army in the ancient world. Its roads connected continents, its laws shaped societies, and its culture inspired generations. For centuries, the world believed that Rome was eternal, the eternal city. Its emperors commanded legions that conquered nations, and its citizens lived with pride in an empire that seemed invincible. But history had other plans. The Roman Empire did not fall in a single battle, nor did it collapse overnight. Instead, it faded slowly, weakened from within and attacked from without, like a grand statue cracking under the weight of time. Political chaos, greed, economic decay, and endless wars began to eat away at its foundations. Each decade brought new challenges, rebellions, invasions, and crises that slowly drained the life from the empire. By the 5th century, the Western Roman Empire, once unstoppable, was struggling to survive. Barbarian armies stood at its gates, cities were crumbling, and the people who once proudly called themselves Romans were losing faith in their leaders. The fall of Rome was not just a political event, it was a transformation of the world. From its ashes would rise new kingdoms, new cultures, and a new era, the Middle Ages. The story of Rome's decline is not only about how an empire ended, but about how the world was reborn from its ruins. The decline of the Roman Empire did not happen overnight. It began quietly, hidden behind the glitter of success and power. Rome was still building monuments, still celebrating victories, but beneath the surface, the empire was beginning to rot. Corruption spread through politics like poison in a grand feast. Senators fought for wealth and influence instead of serving the people. Bribery became common, loyalty was bought and sold, and the voices of the wise were drowned by the greed of the powerful. The empire's strength once came from discipline and unity, but now pride and comfort weakened its soldiers. The once mighty Roman legions began losing battles they should have easily won. Foreign tribes sensed Rome's weakness and started to push at its borders. The Goths, Vandals, and Huns saw opportunity where once there was fear. Economically, the empire was crumbling. Heavy taxes crushed the poor, inflation made Roman coins almost worthless, and trade routes grew dangerous as pirates and bandits spread. Cities that once flourished with marble markets and grand theaters fell silent. Even the mighty city of Rome began to depend on grain from distant lands, just to feed its people. Inside, the empire was divided. In 285 AD, Emperor Diocletian split the empire into east and west to make governing easier, but this division only weakened it further. While the Eastern Empire grew stronger in Constantinople, the Western Empire sank deeper into chaos. This slow decay was not always visible, but it was unstoppable, like a candle burning bright before it dies. Rome was still a name that inspired fear and respect, but the power that once held the world together was fading with every passing generation. As the power of Rome weakened, new enemies appeared from every direction. The northern frontiers that once stood firm began to crumble under endless attacks. Tribes that Rome had once called barbarians, the Goths, Vandals, Huns, and Franks, now marched fearlessly toward the heart of the empire. In 410 AD, the unimaginable happened. Rome, the Eternal City, was attacked and looted by the Visigoths led by Alaric. For the first time in 800 years, foreign soldiers walked through its streets, burning homes and temples that once symbolized Rome's power. To the Roman people, it felt like the end of the world. But the nightmare didn't stop there. The Vandals, coming from North Africa, invaded Italy and sacked Rome again in 455 AD. The city that once ruled the known world was now powerless to defend itself. Meanwhile, in the east, the mighty Huns, led by Attila, terrorized Europe. Although Rome managed to form alliances to stop him, the damage was done. Its armies were exhausted, its resources drained, and its people broken. Finally, in 476 AD, the Western Roman Empire came to its end. A Germanic general named Odoacer overthrew the last emperor, Romulus Augustulus, a boy emperor who ruled only in name. The Roman Empire in the West had fallen. What remained was a shadow of its former glory, its legacy scattered among the ruins of its once great cities. The world had entered a new age, the Dark Ages, but Rome's story was far from over. Its culture, language, and spirit would live on, shaping the future of Europe for centuries to come. As the challenges of ruling such a vast empire grew, even Rome's strongest leaders began to realize that one man could no longer control it all. In 285 AD, Emperor Diocletian made a decision that would change Roman history forever. He divided the empire into two parts, the Eastern Roman Empire and the Western Roman Empire. On paper, it seemed like a smart solution. Two emperors could govern more efficiently, one from Rome in the west and the other from Byzantium, later known as Constantinople, in the east. Together, they could defend the borders, manage the provinces, and restore order to the struggling empire. At first, this plan worked. The Eastern Empire became richer, more stable, and better defended. Its capital, Constantinople, stood at the crossroads of Europe and Asia, a shining jewel of trade, culture, and power. It had strong walls, loyal armies, and vast wealth. But the Western Empire was not so fortunate. Its economy was weaker, its armies thinner, and its politics filled with corruption and chaos. While the East flourished, the West continued to sink under the weight of invasions, poverty, and rebellion. This division created not just two governments, but two very different worlds. The East spoke Greek, loved philosophy, and followed the path of art and learning. The West clung to Latin traditions and military pride. What once was one empire, united under Rome, had now become two hearts beating out of rhythm. Over time, the bond between them faded. The Eastern Empire would later call itself Byzantium, proud and strong. The Western Empire would fall into darkness. And though both shared the same Roman name, their destinies were no longer the same. As Rome's power stretched across continents, its people began to seek more than just conquest and glory. They sought meaning, faith, and hope, something the old Roman gods could no longer give. In the 1st century, a small movement began in the eastern provinces, the rise of Christianity. At first, it was a faith of the poor and oppressed, whispered in secret gatherings beneath the streets of Rome. Christians refused to worship the emperor as a god, and for that, many were persecuted, thrown to lions, imprisoned, or executed. But the more Rome tried to silence them, the more their message spread. A message of love, forgiveness, and eternal life, one that promised salvation not through empire, but through faith. By the time of Emperor Constantine, everything changed. In 313 AD, he issued the Edict of Milan, granting freedom of religion across the empire. Christianity was no longer a crime. It was now protected, and soon it became the empire's official faith. Temples turned into churches. The cross replaced the eagle. And Rome, once built on pagan traditions, now found its soul in the teachings of Christ. But this transformation came with a cost. The old Roman spirit, the discipline, loyalty, and civic pride that had held the empire together, began to fade. Many citizens turned their focus from serving the empire to serving God. The shift in values weakened the state's unity, as faith replaced patriotism and heaven became more important than Rome itself. Christianity gave comfort to millions, but it also marked the beginning of a new era where spiritual power began to rise above imperial rule. The empire was changing, not by invasion but from within. Rome had once been the wealthiest empire on earth. Its gold flowed from conquered lands, its markets filled with spices, silk, and silver. But over time, that golden age began to fade, replaced by debt, corruption, and decay. As conquest slowed, so did the flow of wealth. Without new lands to plunder, the empire's economy began to starve. The fields that once fed millions now lay barren. The roads and aqueducts that connected Rome's heart to its provinces began to crumble from neglect. The empire had grown too big, too expensive to manage. Taxes were raised to unbearable levels. Farmers fled their lands, merchants abandoned trade, and ordinary citizens struggled just to survive. Meanwhile, the rich grew richer, building grand villas while the poor starved in the streets of Rome. To make matters worse, Rome's economy depended on slave labor, but with fewer conquests came fewer slaves. Without them, production slowed, innovation stopped, and industries collapsed. Instead of adapting, the empire clung to its old ways, refusing to evolve. The once proud Roman army, too, began to suffer. With the treasury empty, soldiers went unpaid, loyalty faded, and discipline broke down. The empire turned to foreign mercenaries, barbarian warriors who fought for money, not Rome. These men had no allegiance to the empire, and when gold ran out, they often turned against their employers. Inflation spiraled out of control. Coins were melted down and mixed with cheaper metals, losing their value. Markets crashed, trade routes fell silent. The mighty empire that once ruled the world could no longer feed its own people. This wasn't just an economic collapse, it was a social one. People lost faith in their leaders, in their system, and in Rome itself. The empire that had once united millions under one flag was now divided by poverty, fear, and hopelessness. As Rome's strength faded, its borders crumbled under the weight of endless invasions. From the dark forests and frozen rivers of the north came the Visigoths, Vandals, and Huns, driven by hunger, ambition, and survival. In 410 AD, the unimaginable happened. Rome was sacked by Alaric and his army. Flames rose above temples that had once symbolized eternal power. The city that ruled the world now lay in ashes. Years later, in 476 AD, the final emperor, Romulus Augustulus, was forced to surrender his crown to Odoacer, a Germanic leader. With that single act, the Western Roman Empire was gone. 8 centuries of dominance had ended, not with a roar but with silence. Yet in the East, Rome's spirit still lived on. The Byzantine Empire, with its shining capital Constantinople, carried the torch of civilization. Roman law, language, and architecture survived, reborn in golden mosaics and marble domes. Under Emperor Justinian, great work